Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening again to everyone. Thank you for staying until this latter part of Pista ng Mapa. I know it's a Friday night, but you've chosen to tune in for this. I hope I can make your time worthwhile. To the Pista ng Mapa team, congratulations for a great event. The quality of the content and audience participation the past 3 days were really amazing. Partida, we're all doing this online. For this short talk, I'll be discussing my motivations for making a map of earthquakes in the Philippines, how it was made, its key features and insights that we can derive from it, and lastly, a few parting words. On hindsight, I really have been drawn to the earth sciences, particularly the study of natural hazards. For years, I was helping map faults around Asia while developing and deploying sensor systems for seismic and volcano monitoring. This is a field photo from one of our sites in China where we mapped old rivers and studied ancient earthquakes. In April 25, 2015, after completing recon work and coordination with local partners for a new project, our team was on its last day in Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal. Like in most field work, I woke up on very early in the morning to take photos of the city and its people. Here are some of the photos I took that morning. This is from Durbar Square, a former palace complex, and presently a complex of temples and pagodas. People were praying, selling their goods, and meeting their friends. It's really not unlike Quiapo. By around 9 a.m., I had breakfast with my friends who were there for vacation and took this photo from one of the pagodas. After that, I picked up my luggage and went to the airport. The place was packed as it was climbing season. We were already sitting tight on the plane when a colleague told me to look out of the window. I remember seeing a huge C-130 plane parked near ours, something like this, tipping sideways like a bird flapping its wings. Confused, we were asked to get off the plane and wait on the tarmac. Apparently, a 7.8 earthquake hit us. We can see a wave of dust coming from the city center. I tried to reach my friends in the city, but the phone lines were cut. Surprisingly, I managed to post this on Instagram using a Wi Fi dongle. A couple of days later, I saw this photo in the internet. It was of the square and the pagoda I stood on just a few hours before the earthquake hit. It's now a heap of rubble. I only have a little personal memory of the July 1990 earthquake that hit Manila and most of Luzon. Its full effect I only understood a few years later when we were studying it in a Civica at Cultura class. By nature, we often forget, especially when we were not directly affected. We need to be reminded of our vulnerability. Thus, its memory. That's the reason why I created a map of earthquakes in the Philippines. So, how exactly I made it? The following are the general steps along with links to download the layers. Data came from USGS and the boundary layer used is from PhilGIS or PhilGIS. So thank you USGS and PhilGIS. Alternatively, you may also download admin boundaries through HTX. The bulk of the work was done on QGIS 3.14 with this very nice splash screen. And the documentation on the toolsets I used can also be found on the link above. First, to download the data, we'll need to input our search parameters: magnitude, event type, date, and geographic region. For the date, I specified 1911, which is the earliest record, to June 2020. For this exercise, I preferred using CSV as the output format, and the resulting file has the quake timestamp, location, depth, magnitude, horizontal and depth errors, and even the closest city from the epicenter. Next step is to import it on QGIS as a delimited text layer and making sure that we use the correct coordinate reference system. You'll have something like this with all points using a single symbology. The next step is to utilize the data-defined override option, specifically for the size of the points using the attribute magnitude. So to do that, we choose file type, or sorry, we click on the button, data defined override button, and choose file type integer double string and choose magnitude. We'll then need to specify symbol size. To do that, we'll use the data defined assistant interface, or simply put, the assistant feature using the same button. Applying the values on the left side, you'll have something similar to the right. The next step is we'll use a second attribute, the depth in kilometers, to color the points. So here we used less than 70 kilometers, 70 to 300 kilometers, and greater than 300 kilometers to classify our data. The resulting image is on the right, and we're getting really close. Many points overlap each other, so we add some transparency. I dropped the opacity to 30%, and I also removed the stroke color. The last steps are adding the base map and mapping the map layout, including highlighting where the epicenter of the July 1990 earthquake is. The end result is a map that's quite straightforward. The map shows distribution, while not exactly a hotspot analysis, as this was made for a more general audience. It can be inferred that during the period covered, the east-southeast sections of the country had the most earthquakes. It's also apparent that some island groups, like Palawan, Basilan, Sulu, and Tawi-Tawi, have not seen an earthquake the past 110 years. This does not mean, though, that no earthquakes shall ever happen on these places, nor does it mean that the hotspots will not move in the next years. As we all should, we will defer these assertions to our expert scientists who have spent their lifetime studying earthquakes. For the July 1990 Luzon earthquake, PHIVOX published a collection of studies on the topic. It's on the link above. So, what now? With us living in a disaster movie called Year 2020, the map is really just a humble contribution to remind us of how exposed we are to this type of natural disaster. In reality, we have few choices. We can brush this aside and live in bliss. We can be scared in the short term and then forget about it. Or we can accept the facts and prepare for it. Lastly, I'd like to share a realization during the process of creating the map. While the methods and tools are important, mainly to unravel insights from the raw data, it's always essential to understand why we are mapping and for whom are we doing it. With that, thank you for your time, and I'm open to questions.